Lisbon is a city that doesn't reveal itself all at once. It unfolds through hills, viewpoints, tram lines, and neighborhoods that shift from quiet corners to vibrant streets within a few steps. In this video, we've put together a clear top 15 Lisbon guide, plus transport, designed for those who want a structured overview of the city. Everything is organized into chapters, so you can move through the city the way you want. Rather than focusing on one route or one area, this guide brings together the key landmarks across Lisbon, so you can understand how the city connects and how to move between them efficiently. You'll also find practical transport information throughout, helping you save time and plan your visit without guesswork. Think of this as your starting point in Lisbon, a focused, structured guide you can use before exploring each area in more detail. Lisbon's tram network is more than transport. It's part of the city's identity, climbing hills that most vehicles simply can't handle. The Elevador da Gloria, one of Lisbon's iconic funiculars linking Restauradores to Bairro Alto, is currently closed following an accident. So if you're planning to use it, check for updates before your visit. These small vintage yellow trams date back to the early 20th century, built specifically for Lisbon's steep streets and tight corners. Today, they still run alongside modern lines, connecting neighborhoods like Graça, Alfama, and Bairro Alto in a way no metro line can fully replace. What you're riding here is Tram 28E, Lisbon's most famous line, and one of the last routes still using the original remodelado trams. These cars were built in the early 1900s and later rebuilt in the 1990s, keeping their wooden interiors and compact size so they can still navigate the city's narrow streets. The full route runs between Martim Moniz and Campo de Urique, taking around 45 to 60 minutes, depending on traffic and stops. Trams typically run every 10 to 15 minutes, but in reality, delays are common because the line shares the road with cars and pedestrians. Service starts early, around 5:40 in the morning from Martim Moniz, and runs until about 23:30, with slightly reduced service on weekends and evenings. Because this line passes through Alfama, Graça, Baixa, and Estrela, it's extremely popular and often overcrowded. The busiest boarding point is Martim Moniz, where long queues form, especially from late morning onward. A better strategy is to board at Campo de Urique, which is the opposite terminus and usually much quieter. Another good option is to hop on mid-route in areas like Graça or Estrela, where you have a higher chance of finding space without waiting in line. Inside, capacity is limited, around 20 seated passengers and about 35 standing. So once it fills up, boarding becomes difficult. Despite the crowds, Tram 28 isn't just transport. It's one of the most efficient ways to see Lisbon's historic center in a single ride, especially if you time it right. Just beside the Church of Santa Luzia, this terrace is one of the most accessible viewpoints in Alfama, offering a clear view over the rooftops and the Tagus River. The pergola lined with bougainvillea and the azulejo panels inside the church date back to the 18th century, illustrating Lisbon before the 1755 earthquake. It's free to visit, just a short walk uphill from the Tram 28 stop. The Ascensor da Bica is one of Lisbon's steepest funicular lines, operating since 1892 and connecting Rua de São Paulo with Bairro Alto. It runs roughly every 10 to 15 minutes, and you can use the same Viva Viagem card as the trams. At the top, Miradouro de Santa Catarina opens up with wide city views. It's one of the city's most social viewpoints, with people gathering here for sunset. We begin here at Praça do Comércio, Lisbon's main waterfront square. We'll return to it in a later chapter, but from here, you immediately see how the city opens directly onto the Tagus River. This was historically Lisbon's front door, where ships arrived from across the world. And even today, the connection between the city and the water is constant and visible. The Tagus, or Tejo, is the longest river in the Iberian Peninsula, flowing from Spain into Portugal before widening into this vast estuary. At Lisbon, it spreads so wide that it often feels more like the sea than a river. This scale is one of the defining features of the city. The open horizon, the reflected light, and the constant movement of boats all contribute to Lisbon's unique atmosphere. One of the most practical and enjoyable ways to experience this is from the water itself. River cruises operate from the central waterfront throughout the day, typically lasting around 1 hour, with longer sunset options also available. Most routes pass under the 25 de Abril Bridge and continue west toward Belém. From the river, you get a much clearer view of Lisbon's layout, especially the steep rise of the historic neighborhoods. It also removes the need to climb hills for views, making it a very efficient way to understand the city quickly. Looking across to the opposite bank, you are seeing Almada. The most prominent landmark there is the Cristo Rei statue, inaugurated in 1959. Standing high above the river on a concrete pedestal, it is visible from many points across Lisbon. The monument was inspired by Rio's Christ the Redeemer, but here it overlooks the Tagus and serves as a constant visual reference point. The viewpoint at the top is also accessible and offers one of the best panoramic views back toward Lisbon and the bridge. Just beside it stretches the 25 de Abril Bridge, completed in 1966. Its structure and color immediately remind many visitors of San Francisco's Golden Gate Bridge. Both are suspension bridges, and the visual similarity is strong enough that the comparison is often made instantly. The difference here is the setting: Lisbon's historic skyline on one side, and the greener slopes of Almada on the other. Further along the river system, Lisbon has a second major crossing, the Vasco da Gama Bridge. Opened in 1998, it extends over 17 kilometers across the estuary, making it one of the longest bridges in Europe. It is located further east, outside the historic center, and serves more as a large-scale transport connection than a visual landmark, but it highlights just how wide this river becomes at Lisbon. Along this stretch, you can also see how Lisbon blends historic and modern architecture. One of the most noticeable contemporary buildings is MAAT, the Museum of Art, Architecture and Technology. Its low, curved design sits directly along the river, contrasting with the older buildings around it. Right next to it stands the former power station, a red brick industrial structure that has been integrated into the same cultural space. Together, they mark the transition from the historic center toward the Belém district. From this right bank perspective, where Lisbon's historic center is located, the riverfront gives you a continuous view of the city's structure. The lower areas near the water lead into Baixa, and from there, the city rises steeply toward Alfama and other hilltop neighborhoods. The layered skyline, rooftops, terraces, church domes, becomes much easier to understand from this angle than from within the streets. As you continue along the river, the city gradually shifts from dense urban fabric to more open monumental spaces. This is where Lisbon's maritime history becomes more visible and concentrated. In the next chapters, we'll move in that direction, exploring Belém, including the Belém Tower, the Padrão dos Descobrimentos, and the Jerónimos Monastery, all located along this same waterfront. This view brings all of that into one frame. The river as a route, the bridges as connections, the opposite bank as contrast, and the city rising behind you. It's one of the most complete perspectives you can get of Lisbon before stepping deeper into its landmarks. The Padrão dos Descobrimentos marks Portugal's Age of Discovery, first built in 1940 and later reconstructed in permanent stone in 1960 to commemorate 500 years since the death of Prince Henry the Navigator. The monument rises about 52 meters and is shaped like a ship's prow. Along its sides, you'll see over 30 figures, including explorers, cartographers, missionaries and kings, all central to Portugal's maritime expansion during the 15th and 16th centuries. You can enter the monument and take an elevator to the top terrace for one of the best elevated views over the Tagus and Belém. Right in front, the large compass mosaic on the ground was a gift from South Africa in 1960, mapping the routes of Portuguese exploration across the world. Belém Tower was built between 1514 and 1520 as part of Lisbon's defensive system, guarding the entrance to the Tagus and symbolizing Portugal's maritime power during the Age of Discovery. Originally standing in the river itself, the shoreline has shifted over time, bringing it closer to land. You can normally enter and climb to the upper levels, but access may be temporarily restricted due to maintenance, so check before visiting. Jerónimos Monastery is one of Lisbon's most important landmarks, built in 1501 under King Manuel I at the height of Portugal's Age of Discovery. This was the spiritual home for sailors before their voyages, including Vasco da Gama, whose successful route to India helped transform Portugal into a global maritime power. The architecture you see here is known as Manualine style, unique to Portugal, blending late Gothic structure with maritime symbols, ropes carved in stone, coral-like details, and exotic motifs brought back from overseas exploration. The cloisters are among the most beautiful in Europe, designed with remarkable symmetry and detail, while inside the church, the tall columns seem almost impossibly slender, supporting the vast vaulted ceiling. Entry is split. The church is free to visit, while the cloisters require a ticket, often with long queues, especially midday. If you want a quieter experience, early morning or late afternoon is the best time to enter. Inside, you'll also find the tombs of Vasco da Gama and the poet Luís de Camões, both central figures in Portuguese identity and history. The atmosphere here is calm but powerful, a place that reflects both faith and the ambition of an empire that once connected continents. At the far end of the complex, you'll notice exhibition spaces connected to the National Archeology Museum. However, this museum is currently closed for renovation works, with reopening plans not yet fully confirmed, so access may be limited during your visit. High above Lisbon, Castelo de São Jorge offers one of the best panoramic views of the city, with the Tagus River stretching out toward the 25 de Abril Bridge. Originally fortified by the Moors in the 11th century, the castle later became a royal residence. Today, its walls and towers provide a clear sense of Lisbon's layered history. From above, this is Praça do Comércio, Lisbon's grand riverfront square, seen here from the panoramic terrace of the Arco da Rua Augusta. This viewpoint gives you one of the clearest perspectives of the city, looking inland along the busy pedestrian streets and outward toward the Tagus River. The square itself was rebuilt after the devastating earthquake of 1755, designed as a symbol of Lisbon's recovery and its connection to global trade. At its center stands the statue of King Jose I, facing the river, while the surrounding arcades house cafes and restaurants that keep the area active. And not far from here is the Santa Justa elevator. Currently, the lift is under maintenance. However, you can still reach the upper level on foot from Carmo and enjoy similar views over the city. In the background, that's the arch we were just standing on, now seen from below along Rua Augusta, Lisbon's main pedestrian street. This avenue connects the Baixa district with Praça do Comércio, lined with shops and cafes. As you walk here, you're following one of the city's most important post-earthquake redesigns, created after 1755 to bring structure back to Lisbon's heart. Just a short walk from Rua Augusta, Praça da Figueira opens up into a more local Lisbon atmosphere. This square has long been a marketplace, and you'll often find temporary stalls, food stands, and seasonal markets. It's a great spot to pause, grab something quick, and experience a more relaxed, less formal side of the city center. Praça Dom Pedro IV, better known as Rocio, has been Lisbon's central gathering place for centuries. At its heart stands the column of Dom Pedro IV, the king who became Brazil's first emperor. Surrounding it, the wave-patterned pavement is one of the most recognizable designs in Portugal, reflecting the country's deep connection to the sea. On one side, the elegant National Theatre Dona Maria II dominates the square, rebuilt in 1842, after the original palace was destroyed by fire. Nearby, the twin fountains and shaded benches make this a natural meeting point, where locals and visitors pause before continuing through the city. Lisbon Cathedral, known as Sé, is the city's oldest church, built in 1147, shortly after the Christian reconquest. Its fortress-like exterior reflects a time when churches also served as defensive structures. Inside, the atmosphere shifts to quiet and solemn, with Romanesque arches, Gothic chapels, and layers of history shaped by earthquakes and reconstructions over the centuries. The The Carmo Convent stands as one of Lisbon's most powerful reminders of the 1755 earthquake. What you see today is intentionally left open to the sky. These Gothic arches once supported a grand church, now transformed into a haunting open-air monument. Walking through it feels like stepping into a preserved moment of destruction, where history was only remembered. Inside Time Out Market Lisboa, Lisbon's food scene comes together under one roof. This former market hall now hosts some of the city's best chefs and casual eateries, all centered around long communal tables. You'll find everything from traditional Portuguese dishes to modern street food, making it an easy stop to sample a bit of everything. It's typically open daily from late morning until late evening, but there are no reservations, so expect crowds, especially at peak lunch and dinner hours. Lisbon's metro is one of the fastest and most practical ways to move around the city. The system is simple, with 4 main lines: blue, yellow, green, and red, connecting key areas like the airport, Baixa, and major transport hubs. Trains run frequently, usually every few minutes during the day, making it reliable even without checking a schedule. Operating hours are generally from around 6:30 in the morning until about 1 after midnight. If you're out later than that, you'll need to switch to buses, trams, or taxis as the metro closes overnight. To use it, you'll need a reusable Viva Viagem card. You can load it with single tickets, day passes, or a stored balance known as zapping, which is often the most flexible and cost-effective option for visitors. The same card also works across buses, trams, and even some ferries. There's no need for a dedicated app to ride the metro, but Google Maps works very well here, giving accurate routes, line changes, and live timings. Stations are clearly marked, generally clean, and many feature unique artistic designs, making even short journeys visually interesting. If you're arriving at Lisbon Airport, the Red Line takes you directly into the city, connecting easily with the rest of the network, one of the simplest airport transfers you'll find in Europe. Landing in Lisbon, one of the first advantages is how close the airport is to the city. Humberto Delgado Airport lies only about 7 kilometers from the historic center, so transfers are usually quick and simple. The easiest public transport option is the metro. The Red Line starts right at the airport and connects with the rest of the network, getting you towards central Lisbon in roughly 20 to 30 minutes, depending on your destination and any line changes. Taxis and ride apps like Uber or Bolt are also easy to find outside arrivals, and the drive into the center often takes around 15 to 20 minutes, traffic permitting. If this helped you plan Lisbon, subscribe to Best Travel Video for more travel videos. And if you prefer silent natural sound walks, you can also find our ambient tours on City Walk Travels. In the description, you'll find affiliate links that support the channel, plus links to our books and ebooks if you'd like to explore more. Thanks for watching.